driven more substantially at the state level. It's not as if the federal government cannot drive development, but a federal government that will drive development must be very clear in its focus and must determine those, areas that it wants to intervene in. A lot of things that the federal government is doing today, or sustaining things that it had done before and should have changed, does not reconcile with federalism as it should be practiced.
Can you give us an example?
Let me give an example. In the area of infrastructure, if you look at roads, you will see that the federal government has so many internal roads in the states, which ordinarily should not be their function. The federal government should be bothered about interstate roads that runs from probably Sokoto to Port Harcourt, Abuja to Lokoja, and the rest of them. That is the job of the federal government. Trying to, put together a rail system that connects the states. That's how it should be. But you have a situation now where the federal government has too many internal roads.
And the states themselves don't want to touch those roads.
Those roads has been subject of controversy. You now see federal roads, state roads, you see this discrimination. And then we've seen situations where some states go ahead to fix these roads, knowing fully well that if they are not fixed, it's their people that will suffer. And then they go into a lot of controversy, trying to get a refund from the federal government. Yeah, the federal government is right to protect itself so that it should make sure that procedures are followed. There is information before those projects are started so that people don't just go into your assets and change it and come back to you to say they want a refund. Fine. My own view is that the federal government should not be involved in all those things. Any road that's in the states, the federal government should release them to the states. That is one. Number two, those states that don't have enough federal roads, let the federal government quickly construct roads in those states and hand them over. Because I've seen the benefit of federal government taking itself off internal roads. I'll give you two instances. I live in Lagos here. I used to know the Amadu Bello Way along Babbage. And that road was federal road since the creation of Nigeria. Fine, the federal government was resident here, so it's understandable. But a permanent solution was not found to that road until the Lagos state government applied to take over the road because it now had a permanent solution to it under Tinubu. And that road has been fixed. The Babbage has not encroached on Victoria Island Babbage side up till now. And not only that, the state has even gone ahead to take more land from the Babbage. The Babbage has been taking the land from God knows how many centuries. But the state has been able to recover some of the land back under this Atlantic project. And we need to see more of that. If you look at the Ikorodu Road 2 in Lagos here, you will realize that when the road was released to the state was able to put a BRT. So a minister at the federal level is not going to be in a position to be able to superintend over so many small roads. Grade A, Trunk A, Trunk B, and let the federal government focus on Trunk A roads. Let the federal government focus on those infrastructure that will bring the nation together. And then let the states be responsible for others. You need, for Nigeria to develop, you need a Lagos state working. You need Sokoto working. You need Akpabio doing Akwa Ibom. You need the Shomole working in Edo. And these guys are trying their best. But the more resources they have, the likelihood that the more development they will have. Because we have seen a correlation between resources and development. And we've seen that most states that are doing very well today are those ones that have had the benefit of increased resources coming into them, either by way of IGR, either by way of federal allocation, or by way of derivation.
Okay, for the issue of the roads, the example you gave, if the federal government, like you said, decides to release some of these roads, roads.
It's not only roads, it's in so many
okay,
other.
As an example, if it does that, do you think that in terms of capital expenditure, because we know that it grows every year, the federal government says, look, we have a huge infrastructure deficit, we need to build roads, we need to build bridges. Would there be like a significant impact, perhaps in reduction in the burden that's on the federal government in terms of infrastructure where roads are concerned, if they release some of these roads, or perhaps all
there will be, although it's almost like a zero-sum game.
Okay.
Because when you release the money, more resources to now go to the states will still take over these roads anyway, and they will still continue to spend the money on it. But we are looking at efficiency and timeliness of intervention. The federal structure in Abuja is not going to be able to come and look at a road in Cross River State, because they are already overstretched. They are in Sokoto, they are in Kaduna, they are in Kano, they are everywhere. And in addition to that, they are doing interstate roads. So you can see, it's a difference of approach, so that what we can achieve in 4 years, we can probably achieve it in 1 year. So but there's not somebody at one corner who is looking at these things and intervening as quickly as.
So you want them, the federal government, to just admit that this is too burdensome. Let's release some of this to the states and give them more money to
the federal government knows that. It's very bad. You may not know the magnitude of this thing. I drive out of my estate, I'm already on federal road. If I turn right, I'm on federal road. If I turn left, I'm on federal road. It's an aberration. It's not supposed to be like that. I should not see federal road until I'm approaching Ogun State.
Okay, well, let's talk about what's once it's going to be done now between now and December. The Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission, RMAFC, well, they want to adopt a new revenue sharing formula. We don't know the parameters that will be used, but they are also saying that there will be a public hearing. They want the public, the general public, to have an input. So I suppose it's going to be a very tricky process because, you know, how do you begin to measure, how do you begin to calculate what the federal government should get? Everybody, I suspect, I foresee everybody, all parties involved, coming up with, you know, perhaps very valued arguments why they should get a certain percentage. The federal government, why it should still get the highest percentage. So for you, the job of this, the Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, you probably don't envy them, but how, for them, where do you think they should start? What can they look at and at the end of the day be able to achieve something that's perhaps agreeable to everybody?
I think there's a process. There's a process that is already in place. What they are going to do now is to, you know, readjust that process and make sure they bring a lot of the relevant parameters into the determination of how these things will be shared. Yeah, we're going to talk about sharing now, but I'm sure after the break I'll be more interested in talking about how do we even bake this cake. The history of Nigeria since 1946, since the richest constitution has been, I will share. But that will be after the break, I suppose. They are not likely to have problems at the National Assembly level. You know why? Because generally, there is a consensus or some kind of understanding that there should be devolution of resources. And as far as possible, given our present realities, there should be some movement towards fiscal federalism so that states can control their resources and make remittances to the federal government. That's what our founding fathers said.
Obviously, that's
in the 1958 Constitutional Conference in London, 1958 Constitutional Conference in London, and the 1959 Constitutional Conference in Lagos. It was negotiated that Nigeria will succeed and survive on the basis of fiscal federalism and all those things. We have deviated from the path that our founding fathers, you know, put in place for them. The military did that. This is almost 13 years, 14 years of democracy. We should be moving towards that. Okay,
Wale, I'm sorry to cut you in, but we need to take that break at this point to come back to talk more on this fiscal federalism and, of course, what the RMAFC can do to perhaps arrive at a win-win situation. We've been talking about the ongoing conversation for a new sharing formula for the federal government, the states, and the local governments. I've been talking to Wale Oluwo, a financial analyst. We'll take a break at this point, and we'll be right back.
Wherever and whatever your banking needs, Guarantee Trust Bank will be there, now and into the future. Because you're at the heart of everything we do. Guarantee Trust Bank, proudly African, truly international.
Welcome back. We've been talking about a new revenue sharing formula for